Hello and welcome to Rower Replay for the first time in 2025. The first robotics competition game just got released, and after a day to think about the game and how I believe it might be played, I'll be going over what the ReefSCAPE field looks like, some strategies to think about, and how I believe it might be played in the future. First off, we finally got the ReefSCAPE field released, and this is a top-down view of the field. Over here, we can see that the coral station zone, we're able to collect coral from human players, and score that on the branches in the reef for more points, or in the bottom area of the reef called the trough for less points. On the start of the reef at every game, as well as the 3 field will be algae, which can be scored through the low goal for a benefit of 6 points, or a high net called the barge for the benefit of 4 points. However, the 6 points will give the opposing alliance a chance to score 4 back in a layup, so this will mostly only net you 2 points as the layup is pretty easy to hit. Now, let's get to some strategies of play that I thought might be pretty viable this year. Based on some ideas from the Robot in 3 Days group Cranberry Alarm, there does seem to be a somewhat simple way to score all the coral on all 4 levels, such as a slide of some sort at a correct angle. Due to this, as well as the very short cycle path through here, it seems that coral might be a game piece that ends up being very easy to do, and instead of the challenge of coral being how to score it, it ends up being a question of how fast you're able to score it, like the cones and cubes of 2023. Where many robots ended up being able to score at the highest level, but the difference in robots ended up coming really from how fast they were able to make their cycles, not whether they were able to make it up there or not. Considering all of this, one strategy that we might see some teams run is a robot that only does L1 scoring, but does it so extremely quickly that it ends up doubling cycles of other robots and actually gaining more points than going for L4s and having to line up for those. With this type of robot, you'd also be able to do a little sweep of the algae on the ground at the start of the match and get 6 points, as well as being able to do a lot of L1 cycling without having to deal with the algae on the reef messing you up, which could also garner you a rank point if you're able to go fast enough, as the rank point threshold for coral is 20 coral. Another more basic concept of robot that is just one that does every level, which I suspect we'll be seeing a lot of. These robots will be able to get the max points from the L4s and will be able to work their way down from L3, L2, and will likely ignore the algae on the ground for the most part. We might also see some robots that only choose to do the very high objectives, such as playing algae in the barge and going for L4 only, which could pair very nicely if they are able to make an end effector to carry both in one go. I personally can see a lot of different robot strategies coming out of this game and how these robots will be designed, and I can see why everyone would want to do each version, as there are a lot of pros to every single version of a game strategy for a robot. I do believe that some of the best highest ranking robots, and ones that we'll often see captaining in early events, would be ones that both can climb deep and cycle cargo like an L1 bot extremely quickly, which would end up giving you the auto, cargo, and climb rank points, as 20 cargo seems very doable with a solid alliance and a speedy L1 bot. Personally, I feel like no matter what teams do with the cargo, that the deep climb should be your first priority, as 12 points in this game seems like a really nice boost, along with the fact that if you can deep climb and have at least one active robot on your team, that will end up being a free RP every single match without your partners needing to do anything but drive. How I see this game progressing throughout the season goes as a gut reaction would just be me thinking that with Coral having 48 total spots to be placed on the actual branches, and at the world level, with these short cycle paths, I feel like we might end up seeing reefs get fully filled, which is why I do think that we might end up with some defense in this game to stop teams from filling the reef up entirely. I do think that early or before anyone will be completely filling the reef, the defense isn't really going to be much of anything, but towards the DCMP and world events, I think that we might end up seeing some defense bots that will end up carrying alliances, like 321 did last year, even with the zones not being great towards scoring defense, but I'll talk about that later. Now, for some ideas of how pathing in this game might work early, as well as later in the season, I believe that one of the tougher challenges in this game might not be visible early, will be the pathing that some robots will have to take in auto, as with only 2 coral stations to collect extra game pieces from after your first preload, and with a lot of robots I don't think that will be looking to pick up that coral on the ground or the algae on the ground in auto. A third robot will have to figure out how to manage 2 robots on the coral station, and how scoring will work in autos with 2 robots in one area, and trying to figure out the spacing between those 2 robots when you don't know your other alliance members' auto might be a tricky thing to figure out. For teleop pathing, I think in qual matches we'll end up seeing something that looks like this, where you'll have the 2 robots who are the better cyclers on the field just doing squirrel in this straight instant path, and the third robot that might put 2 algae into the processor for a co-op point, or be taking a far side on the branch on the reef so that the faster scoring robots can maximize their potential, and you'll also be getting that coral RP from the third robot. For playoffs, we might see some of the same strategy on triple scoring coral bots, but I feel like having that third robot leave and play defense might be valuable for the space for the alliance captain and the first pick to work with, as all of this entire area that I've outlined here won't be clogged. I have seen a lot of negativity surrounding whether defense is possible or even viable in this game, and I do want to say that as this game has been unofficially coined Deep Space Part 2, there will most certainly be a lot of good ways to play defense in this game. One of the main things to consider comparing this game's defense to previous games' defenses is that you aren't really playing scoring defense in this game. Trying to stop a robot after they've already have a game piece like you were able to in 2019, 2023, and 2024 isn't how this defense is meant to be played. It's supposed to be played as collection defense, and that's evident from the fact that these coral stations don't have any protected zones at all. And this is also why pins have been lowered to 3 seconds, because instead of playing to stuff your opponent from scoring when they have a piece, you're supposed to use quick movements and agility to gain leverage and not even allow the opponent to gain coral in the first place. If we look at what defense might look like in a standard playoff game here, we can see that having a robot on the coral substation means that both robots have to go through one substation, which, while annoying, isn't all that great for a defense bot. However, the main purpose of defense and how I think it might get played in the future is to go around like this, and forcing your opposing alliance to constantly shift which coral station they use, and force them to not come through this choke, and instead bully them to go all the way around the reef to get the next coral, which will cause them to lose precious time and cycles. With how fast the cycles are, if you're able to stop your opponents from going through this tiny little area here at this choke, and you force them to go all the way around, your alliance partners might be getting 2 whole cycles of coral in the time that they are taking to go all the way around. So with this ping pong type of defense that I might be able to see showing up later, of bouncing around between substations, we could end up seeing some pretty effective defense if a team is able to play it correctly, like 321 did last year. These were my thoughts on what I feel like the 2025 FRC game ReefSCAPE will end up looking like, and please do remember that this is just my gut reaction, and I think that as we progress throughout the season, we will start to see certain strategies emerge as meta strategies, and certain ideas that we thought at the beginning of the season to be crazy to be just an idea that everybody can do. If you have any opinions, please leave them in the comments below, as I'd be happy to discuss any ideas you guys might have, and thank you for watching another episode of Robo Replay, and have a lovely kickoff.